The tarot has been with me since childhood. My grandmother was the first one to introduce me to the cards to practice meditation and healing. In this conversation, I speak to John Ballantray, who is a excellent tarot reader and have been working with it on and off for over 50 years. So it's so interesting to be speaking to somebody who has been working with a deck for such a long time and also work with it in a slightly different way to me. I hope that you find this conversation as useful as I did. And so without further ado, let's head in.
About the nature of the inner being, because I
Okay.
think I think that's quite important. It's like life is about morality and developing a moral sense, and it's things like that. So I was able to do. I ended up looking at Thomas Hobbes. Do you know Thomas Hobbes? 16th century English philosopher, and David Hume, who was a moral philosopher. And
Right. Sure.
so I was looking at Hume and utilitarians. And so it's a bit like, is man good or not? Goethe, that you may know, said once at one point, man is by essence good, but darkly driven. And so it makes me wonder, are we actually good? Is the human race good people? And we get converted or damaged or twisted into something that we're actually not? And how can we reconnect with an inner sense of goodness that I think is at the root of everybody? Which means that if somebody's got a problem and they don't know what to do, what's their starting point going to be? And ideally, we can help people reconnect with their inner guidance. And then I get into AI prompts, because with an AI prompt, because it's like what prompts you, your inner self prompts you to do certain things, which got me into the idea of a prompt. So AI prompt. So I watched a short video on AI. So you've got three factors: the context, the task, and the third thing I can't remember. And it's a bit like when it comes to people and their lives, what's the prompt and what's the context? Maybe we begin with the context. What's the context of your life at the moment? Things like that. That's the kind of stuff I do. When it comes to astrology, people ought not to call themselves astrologers. They all do, but they know nothing. I'm being a bit ridiculous here, but William Lilly, that you may have heard of, who was this famous 17th century English astrologer, he referred to himself as a student in astrology.
Mm,
So that's important,
that is
because
important.
all these people on the internet, they call themselves astrologers. They've been looking at it for 5 years or 10 years. It takes 3 lifetimes to learn astrology.
Right.
It does. And 5 years doesn't count.
Right.
So anyway, I don't call myself, if anything, I read tarot cards,
Right. So,
but I think that's the main thing. I mean,
okay.
I'd like to do astrology, but the thing is, if you're going to interpret horoscopes for other people, you need an aspect between Mercury and Uranus, which connects. Uranus is the higher mind, Mercury is the lower mind. If you've got an aspect, good, bad, it doesn't matter. If you've got an angular relationship between those two planets, you can take what's in your higher mind and present it in an everyday way to other people. If you don't have an aspect between Mercury and Uranus, you can't be an astrologer.
Sure.
Yet people who are involved with astrology never ask themselves, because they read something and think they understand it and think they're therefore capable of understanding everything, they call themselves astrologers. They don't ever look at their own horoscope and say, okay, what gives me the ability to look at a horoscope and interpret it for other people? They
Mm,
don't know. They never look.
mm.
So the tarot is different because it's pictures. And anybody can look at a picture. You
Yeah,
walk
yeah.
into you're in London, so you're walking along the street, or you're driving along the street, and you see, I can't remember, is it a white circle with a red bar across? which means no entry. Or is it a red circle with a white bar? I can't remember.
I don't
But
drive, so your guess is as good as mine.
okay, but you see push a sign that says push and an image that says no entry here, and you obey because you look at the symbol, you look at the picture, and you understand what it means. And in the same way, although maybe more specialized, you look at a tarot card, you see a picture, and you do something with the image on the picture. And
Mm,
anybody can do it. Anybody can look and appreciate what's there. So you're picking the number 9 for the Hermit. So we look at the picture in the Rider deck. I've got a Rider deck, but I don't have the image here. But you've got this old fellow with a beard on top of a mountain, and he's got a light in his hand. And so you can take individual bits and pieces of the picture. So you're meant to climb, or you want to climb. You want to be on top. You're isolated at the moment because the hermit's standing on his own. But you've also got a light in your hand. So you can be holding up light for other people to follow or to see or to illuminate a particular situation. So the work that you do at the moment with the tarot and the spiritual guidance, or maybe it's life coaching, I can't remember what, it makes sense that you're doing the right thing at the moment by picking the number 9.
mm,
Whereas maybe a year from now, you'd pick the number 4 because you're more involved in building an empire. Or
mm.
you pick the number 3, so you're more involved in being the center of a group of like-minded people.
How long have you been working with the tarot for? Like, how long have you been working with the tarot?
I began in 1975.
Wow, that makes it like, I'm really bad at maths, but that makes it like more than 40 years, doesn't it?
25, 49, 50 years.
50 years working with the
Well,
tarot.
not off and on. I began in
Right.
1975,
Yeah,
and and I've done other things, but I keep coming back to it. And it's in the last few years with the YouTube videos,
yeah.
I've been more focused on it. But it's so I've been in that kind of area for 50 years.
And what inspired you to start working with the tarot in the first place? Because you did start during a time where it perhaps was a bit more frowned upon to work with the tarot, right?
Okay, I was living in Bath in the south of England, or you know where Bath is,
Yeah.
over there to the left, if you look at the map. And so I was doing a teacher training course at the University of Bath. And a friend of mine came to visit for the weekend from London. And he had been to see somebody in England, a woman called Alison Parker. And so Alison had done a tarot reading for him. And he told me about it, and it sounded okay. And there happened to be a deck of cards in the house where I was living. So he got out the deck, and there was a book, and he picked cards, and he read from the book. And I looked at the picture and didn't need to read from the book. So I sort of knew what it was about and what was going on and what the answer was. So it helps with me. I've got the moon at 12 degrees of Cancer, and that's in the Scorpio decanate of Cancer, which gives me an inbuilt, inborn ability to read cards. So that began in 1975. So we looked at the deck, the spread that came up, and I talked about it and connected the dots, kind of thing, because we used a Celtic cross. So you get 10 cards. And so the friend of mine, he would read the book and he would read card 1 and then card 2 and so on. And I was sort of darting back and forth all over the place, putting bits and pieces together and turning it into a coherent story. And it just was automatic. So when I left Bath to go to back to Amsterdam, a friend of mine in Bath gave me a deck of cards, and I took it with me. But it was a Marseille deck,
All
which
right, yeah.
has got which has got no pictures on it. And I looked, I couldn't do anything with it because I knew some numbers, but it's not the same. I think I can't do anything with card decks with no pictures.
Mm.
So anyway, I was in Amsterdam, and I went to a bookstore called Au Bout du Monde on Single, which is a nice place, and bought some books there. And sort of one thing led to another, and then uh, I just sort of I'm kind of lazy, and I didn't want a job. And I had a teaching qualification and a degree, university degree, and all sorts of experience, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I still don't know what I want to do. And I just sort of do what's in front of me. But I've tried planning and organizing, and it works for a day or two, but then I get bored or I forget or I do something else instead. So I'm kind of all over the place because I've got the sun in Cancer. And
Mm.
there's a book called the Encyclopedia of Astrology by Nicholas Devore, and he gives a little rhyme for each of the signs of the zodiac. And for Cancer, it says, I can't remember the first line. Who changes like a changeful season, holds fast and lets go without reason. Who is there can give adhesion to Cancer? And that's the same for all Cancerians. We need something that acts as a kind of glue that gives us adhesion. It gives us something to hold on to. But the thing is, we also hold fast and let go without reason. We don't. So why do I do the tarot? I don't know. I can give you an answer today, and it will be maybe okay. But tomorrow, I've already forgotten what I said yesterday, and I've got a different reason or a different explanation of why I'm doing it now. So when somebody, these magazines like Cosmopolitan, where they give you personality tests and they say, okay, you've got this situation. Would you do A, B, or C? Pick one of the. I can't do that. I'm incapable of choosing.
Mm.
So whereas show me a tarot card and I'll do something with it.
Mm.
So I don't know how it began. That's how it began, but um, I don't know. I just kept going. I was doing this thing about aim. I did a video yesterday um, about taking aim,
Mm.
and in English or people talking about if you've got a gun, ready, aim, fire. And with this is a logical sequence you go about things. With me, it's aim. It's like fire, aim, ready. I sort of fire, and it's like I just do things and then I take aim.
Sure.
Yeah. Instead of the more normal way of taking aim then firing.
Mm. So, my impression from the videos that I've seen of you on YouTube is that you have deeply connected with the meanings of the cards that sort of has been historically been assigned to them. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of my feeling. And then you've obviously added your own narrative on top of that as well. And I suppose from your point of view, like, would you say that's true? And also, like, do you feel that you bring in some more psychic abilities when it comes to using the tarot, or would you say that's more separate? Like, do you like how do you do a reading?
Um, I I think that psychic ability comes and goes. So rather than depend on a psychic impression, I try to go with logic.
Hmm.
And a long time ago, I wrote, I can't remember what I wrote, but it was called Analytical Tarot. And it's more like you take the picture and you've got the different factors or bits and pieces in the picture, and you join them together in a kind of logical way. But one of the things I like to emphasize with people is rather than learn what the card means. So we've got, for instance, okay, you picked a number nine, so you're the hermit. So I've got certain things I would say about a hermit type of individual. And I would make, so let's say you want it, let's say this is not necessarily correct, but let's say the idea is you need to get out and about more and deal with other people. So I've got my ideas and my suggestions on what would be a good way to get out and about. Whereas my next door neighbor, who has different experiences, would have different suggestions for how to go out, how to go out and about and meet people. And so the basic idea is there, get out and about, but how you go about it is going to be very different depending on who the reader is. And I think that's the point. You've got a card that has a particular meaning. Let's say the Eight of Pentacles shows the fellow sitting on a bench and he's got six coins behind him and he's working on one and he's got one at his foot. So the card in some way represents working away at something and gradually or over time you make it better or you refine the process. So I would maybe talk about what I came across that that helps somebody make progress. But again, my neighbor or somebody else in another country has got a very different explanation or suggestion about how you go about making things better. So I pick from, I watch videos about Japanese philosophy, and there's a concept, Ishigo Ishii, which I came across in a video, and it means one moment, one life. And so you've got the idea that every moment is different and unique. So rather than ignore what's going on, or rather than assume that every moment is the same and there's no real difference, you treat every moment like it's a whole life. This goes back to William Blake. If you can see the world in a grain of sand. So it's a sort of, yeah. So I sort of, when I come across something that I think that I enjoy, or that says something to me, I make a note of it somewhere, and then when when a card comes up that sort of connects with that idea of living every moment fully, then I would talk about Ishigo, Ishii, whereas somebody else might talk about William Blake. Somebody else might talk about a motto, or their philosophy might be live for today, for tomorrow we may die.
Hmm.
And it was a different kind of, it's sort of the same thing, like make the most of every moment instead of not bothering. Or but the thing is, if you can't be bothered making the most of every moment, what do you do? So I've got one explanation or two possibilities for somebody who's stuck or who's bored. Whereas again, you can have a very different or a slightly different take on the same kind of idea. And so I think the point is if you're anybody reading tarot cards, by all means read the book and get an idea of what the card is about. But don't forget, you've lived a lot, even if you're only 20. You've had tons of experiences in life, good, bad, people you've met, people you've liked, people you didn't like. You've had good experiences, bad experiences. You can take what you've been through and relate it to a card that comes up. So don't ignore your own self, but that's not really being psychic. That's more uh, connecting, making connections for people,
Yeah, that
and
was
and
really
and giving
intuitive
giving
in a
them
way.
the advantage or the benefit of what you've been through without expecting them to duplicate it or repeat it. But you're giving them an idea of a particular way of looking at a situation.
So it's like using the tarot for mentoring, basically, in a way.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So when it comes to your journey with the tarot and working with the cards, what would you say is one of the biggest mistakes you've done when it comes to like in your journey? Like, do you feel like you've made some mistakes where you're like, oh, I didn't do that appropriately, or yeah, just any mistakes that you can identify as a part of your journey?
I can't think of any. Not that I'm big-headed, but it's partly one of the things I talk about is if something goes wrong and you
Mm.
learn from it, was it really a mistake?
Okay, so let's
And
rephrase the question.
that's my philosophy.
I agree. I totally agree with you actually in many ways. So working with the tarot, what are some of your biggest learnings then?
My My advantage is that I've got, quite early on, I was given the idea that the value of astrology is you don't expect people to produce what they can't produce. So, Tyrians, you don't expect a Tyrian to be quick off the mark and to be changeable and to be easy to get along with. So, and if you've got an idea of the nature of the individual or the fact that there are signs of the zodiac which give a particular character and personality, you don't expect. Okay, so my wife is a Leo, and Leo, she's really sloppy. She just makes a mess wherever she goes, and she leaves a mess behind her, and it's terrible. But the thing is, it's how she's built, and I think that's the point. With signs of the zodiac, it shows how you're built. So me, changeable. I need something to give me adhesion. And maybe the tarot gives me adhesion because it's so complete and it's everything and it touches on everything. So that can be why I like the tarot because it gives me something to attach myself to. Whereas, so the signs of the zodiac, we've got each sign has its own strengths and weaknesses, but it's how you're built. So rather than try to become what you're not, right, understand what you're like and make the most of your strengths and
Yeah,
do what you can to overcome your weaknesses. And I forget what the question was.
that's all right. And
Oh
obviously, I
no.
laughed because I'm a Leo.
Okay, I know. Um, but I think it has to do with um, don't expect people to produce what they can't produce. And so if somebody does something that is annoying, I think I can be annoyed, but at the same time, or I can be annoyed, or I can think that's that's the kind of thing that an Aquarian does. So I put that onto my long list of ideas about the nature of Aquarius, and then it gives me something to check the next time I meet an Aquarian. So
Hmm.
it's a bit like you're always in the pro. That's why astrology takes 3 lifetimes to learn because it's just so food. It's so big, so huge. So when you learn something about when you have an experience of somebody in a particular kind of way, it's data, and you add it to your database, and the database is never ending. So you don't bother trying to finish it up or trying to have an endpoint or trying to have a definitive description or a definitive conclusion, which goes back to Ishi Go, Ishi E. Every moment is a whole life.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose what I just heard from what you said about, for example, your wife and Leos and Aquariuses and all the other signs is that they have strengths and weaknesses. And I think that, if one can become aware of those strengths and weaknesses, one can perhaps also become more empathetic, right? In the sense of that, let's say, I don't know, a Leo is messy. Actually, I'm really tidy. But you give her some grace because you just know this is just a part of her that she probably won't change.
Well, you've got 3 planets in Virgo.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't have any planets in Virgo. See, not that I'm saying Virgo is neat and tidy because
Oh no, but they
Virgos,
are though.
well, thing is, Virgos are messy to begin with. The finished product is good, but they
Mm.
get there via messiness. So, um, uh, there's something about, okay, I'll tell you this. Um, if you think we've got 12 signs of the zodiac, this is something for you viewers that you'd never have heard before. And so you get 12 signs of the zodiac. Imagine giving each sign of the zodiac 6 years of life or 6 years of time. That means that if you're in Aries, you're at some your age all through your life, you're either 1 to 6, and we shouldn't expect you to be old and mature and sensible because you're only a child.
Mm.
Whereas Taurus is 6 to 12, a different mentality, a different approach to life. Gemini's 12 to 18. Gemini's are teenagers. And imagine, remember when you were 15, you knew everything. You shirked responsibility. You didn't want to do what you were told, even though it was sensible. You were damned if you were going to do what you were told. And that's what Geminis are like. Cancer's 18 to 24. So Leo is 24 to 30. And so
Ah,
you're at the beginning of Leo. And so um uh you're like 24 and a half.
ah,
You were born at age 24 and a half, and you've always been a 24-year-old. Even when you were four, you acted like a 24-year-old. When you're 80, you'll be a 24-year-old. And so there's something about that kind of idea, whereas Virgo is 30 to 36, Libra 36 to 42,
mm.
42, 48 for Scorpio, 48 to 54 for Sagittarius. My daughter's a Sagittarian, and she was born 54 years old. Like when she was an infant, she was like an old woman, not an old, a middle-aged woman. And so it's something to do. It's a little silly throwaway thing, but it makes all that it gives you a basic starting point for understanding the nature of the signs of the zodiac.
Mm.
Whereas I'm 19, I've got the sun at 5 degrees of Cancer. I'm 1/6 of the way through 18 to 24. I'm 19. I'm never going to grow up. I'm never going to be more than 19, which can be why, I don't know what to do with myself. I've got no what's the future? It's what I make it. It's enjoyable. It's for it's for traveling. It's for going around and exploring what I want to explore because I'm only 19. So don't expect me to be 45-year-old or to have the sense of responsibility that you get when you're older.
Mm.
I just don't have it in me. And you're always going to be 24 and a bit, maybe 24 and three quarters. I can't remember that. You can actually figure out the exact age of the individual, but
Right.
at the same time, Aries people are like children, and they get easily distracted, and they do something, and the same way that a child will play and then get the toy and throw the toy away and move on to something else. Aries people will do the same, and they'll act like that. But then I have to qualify that by talking about the moon position, because the moon is the mental personality, and it's how you naturally think. And you get the moon in Aquarius, so my wife is a Leo, but she's got the moon in Pisces, so we have to factor in something about the moon position and the nature of the moon and how that impacts the individual. So this is why it takes 3 lifetimes to learn astrology because it's so complicated. There's so much of it. As my teacher told me years ago, imagine a beach and you've got an uncountable number of grains of sand. It's not obviously you can count them eventually, but it's a bit like that's astrology where you've got millions of little bits and pieces, and you need to put them all together, and that's why it takes so long to learn.
Mm. So when you give somebody a tarot reading, how do
Yep.
you approach that with a client? Like talk me through the process of having a tarot reading with John.
Okay, so I like questions. I like to know what you want to know. It can be one question or 20, and I'll do what I can to answer all of them.
So my
In
question is, imagine that my question right now is in my career, in my career, where should I place my energy next?
Okay, so let's say that. So in the email that you send me, um, uh, I do reading. I record the reading and send it to you. I don't like to do one-on-one
Right.
because sometimes people just want to talk
Yep.
and share their situation, and I think I talk to your friends and so on. But anyway, so that's your question. I would, in the meantime, have asked you to pick a number between 1 and 9. Give me a number.
Which was, let's say it's the original numbers that I picked. I picked number nine,
Okay,
right? Yep.
9, and the second number between 0 and 22
13, I think.
was 13. Okay, so I would eventually get to the question, but I would talk. I would look at your date of birth and your horoscope and maybe mention a few things that seem to me to be important about you and your nature and your situation at the moment. Then I would talk about the two numbers that you chose and talk about the hermit and the death card and what those two mean. So if that was your question, then you need to retire from the world for a while because it's a hermit and think it through and assess and analyze and think about where you want to go and where you've been and what you enjoyed, what you want to take with you into the future because you picked the number 9 for the hermit. But you also picked the death card for number 13, so is the death card. So it's time for a new beginning, but also it should be something that you maybe haven't done before and something interesting and something exciting and something new
Mm.
because you picked the number 13. Then I would probably have picked then I before I do the reading, I will have picked cards, and then let's say it's three cards, and I would, if the card is, maybe it's a yes. With your question or with a question like that, it's not a yes and no. I'd probably pick three cards and
Okay.
talk about,
I have three cards that I picked recently, which sort of
okay,
aligns with this.
okay,
I picked the Ace of Wands, the
okay,
Four of Coins, and the World.
okay. So do you use upright and reversed?
These were all upright, basically.
But do you use reverse
No, I don't use
cards?
reverse. I don't use reverse.
Okay, so that's I do.
Right.
Mainly because a card that's upside down can simply indicate a delay.
Hmm.
So, an example you could give is, let's say, am I going to meet somebody and you get a court card upright or a court card upright? The answer is yes, you're going to meet somebody like this. Whereas if the card is upside down, it can mean you're going to meet somebody like this, but you're not going to like them. Or
Hmm.
there's going to be a delay in meeting this kind of person that you actually want. So
Hmm.
how do you get that if you don't use reverse cards? And I don't think you can. Whereas there are delays in life all the time, and things don't quite work out the way you want, or there's a glitch that you have to take account of, and things are different. And so how can you do that if you don't use reverse cards? So I'll tell you what I think from the Ace of Batons, the Four of Coins, and the World. But I do think you ought to use reverse cards. But anyway, but the thing is with me, I would look at the card. If the card is upright, it means do this. If it's upside down, it means don't do this or avoid that. And so that's one way of looking at the three cards that would come up. So I would take a look at each card individually and say something about each one, and then maybe I would put them all together into a particular kind of story and then say what to do. But with you, with the Ace of Batons, you pick the Death card. Death is endings and beginnings. The Ace of Batons is a new beginning. So you've got a repetition of the idea of do something new,
Hmm.
right? The Four of Coins, coins is money, but also coins represents values. And that's a more important meaning for the Suit of Pentacles. It's important for you with the Four of Pentacles to be clear in your own mind about what you care about and what you want and what you want to promote. And because the Four of Pentacles is kind of fixed in place, and because you're a Leo, which is a fixed sign, so you don't change. And you've got the moon in Aquarius, which is a fixed sign, so it takes you ages to learn anything. And you basically don't change. You're 95% fixed. And that's just how you're built. So work with that. So rather than expect that you ought to make a decision tomorrow, that's not how you're built. So I would have explained this at the beginning a bit about from your Leo
Right.
sun and Aquarian moon. So with the Four of Pentacles, that can be why you need the number 9 for the Hermit. It's going to take you a while to figure out what you actually care about, not what you think you ought to care about or what everybody has told you you should care about, but what you personally, for yourself, based on your inner understanding, what you actually want, what you actually care about. And then when you eventually discover what it is that you care about, and this goes back to the earlier point about there being, I would give one suggestion about what to do, but somebody else would give you another idea about how to go about discovering what it is that you care about.
Mm.
And so it's not so much a psychic ability, it's more take my experience or take your experience, and you've had certain things you've been through and certain things you've discovered, and then you apply that or tell that to the questioner and let them do something with it or not. So with the Ace of Batons, it's time for a new beginning. The Four of Pentacles, rather than just make a new beginning, take the time, and with you, because your birthday's coming up in July, take between now and July to ruminate and to ponder on and to make notes about what you actually want to do with yourself and with your situation. And then with the world, you will be successful, but also think big because it's the world.
Mm.
So rather than think, I should take a small step and see how that works. Throw throw caution to the wind. When you know what you care about, go for it 100%. Rather than, so I can't remember what your question was. Was it what area?
Yeah, so it's sort of this, so yeah, the question like in terms of my career, where should I place my energy?
Okay, so where should you place your energy? I think it's important to remember the actual wording of the question because the
Mm.
tarot will answer the question that was asked,
Mm.
not what it turns into when you begin to talk about it. So
Mm.
where should you place your energy in the Ace of Batons, a new venture or into a situation that will enable you to be a pioneer and to do what's never been done before? Because it's the Ace of Batons. So you need something dramatic and inventive and enterprising because it's the Ace of Batons. You need to do something fresh and new based on determined values that you've worked out and you've figured out. So if you've got four pentacles, so maybe you need four legs of a stool. Rather than choose one thing, choose four or let four different approaches or four different activities be a support for the pioneering version of you. So the four legs of the could be the tarot, astrology, meditation, and counseling or something like that, or whatever it happens to be. But it's important, we're going back to the Hermit card, you need to take a while. Instead of assuming that you already know,
Mm.
don't do that. Start with making notes and be like a hermit. Shut yourself away into your room and close the door. And meditate, ponder and pay attention to the weird ideas that come to you. And so when you've got an idea, maybe I could start doing this. Don't immediately think, nah, that would never work. That's talking you. This goes back to the video yesterday, talking yourself out of
Yeah, I saw
following
that.
your own instinct or your own suggestion. So maybe you get four coins representing four sources of income because it's money, or four types of activity that will be a support for you to sit on and to build on, and also with the world. So what where should you put your energy into something new and vital and exciting and pioneering that's never been done before? Put your energy into more than one area, four areas, because it's four legs on the stool and you get four coins. And also think big. Oh, it's the world card. So you're in the world and you've got the internet. So have an international clientele or have an international or internationally based approach. You're in London and you're Norwegian, but there's a whole world out there to conquer.
Mm.
So that's where you put your energy from those three cards. That's the kind of thing And anybody, the thing is, anybody watching this can look at the Ace of Batons, and they would maybe have something slightly different to say, but it's probably going to be along the lines of make a fresh start. But how you would do it, or what the fresh start would be, will the actual specific information they would give you would be based on their own experience or what they discovered to be workable or what's a good use of your time and energy. And so then the Four of Pentacles, um, your approach has to be original,
Mm.
and the world is the world. So on the one hand, it means you will have success. At the same time, you'll have great success. You should think big. You should aim high because it's the world, and you should expand your horizons, not just English and Norwegian, but maybe do you speak Swedish?
No, I don't. I mean, but Norwegian and Swedish is basically the same, just
I was
slightly different.
thinking
Yeah,
maybe you can understand Swedish people.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you've got a North European, close to the Arctic Circle mentality. So what can you do with that, and how can you present life-changing ideas to people in more than one way
Hmm.
throughout the world? Because what do people in Hong Kong do? So you've got different mentalities in different parts of the world, and um, how do you present or give something to everybody instead of just people who speak English or
Hmm.
just people who speak Norwegian?
Hmm.
That kind of thing. So what I would then do recording once I've taken time to think about what I think it all means or what it means. I would make notes, and then I start the recording, I go to the top of my document and I just work through all the information, and then I get to the end. And that's why I don't like doing readings one on one with
Sure.
people,
I get that.
because I've got all the information that I think is important to pass on to the questioner. But I can make point one, and then maybe they want to argue with me, or they want to tell me more or explain something, and it sort of breaks the flow
Hmm.
because I've got like 40, 45 minutes or however long it's going to take to go through all the information. And I pass on a lot of bits and pieces as well that you can accept or reject or work with or work against. But it's a bit like if we're going to have a conversation as well, there's no time to do it.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get that because I do the flip side of you in a sense that I do one-to-one live readings on Zoom or in person, right? And even, the depth that you just went into with my reading on the Ace of Wands, the Four of Coins, and the world, and the way that you expressed that, and I just sat here and listened, right? If I had come with information or interjected, it would just take hours upon hours. So I really appreciate what you
The,
just
the, the
did.
the other thing is when I first began here in Ontario, I would do readings with people,
Hmm.
and it's sometimes there was one time you asked me about mistakes earlier, and one mistake is not having a time limit, because I was with somebody and they just kept asking questions, and I didn't know how to stop or how to get rid of them. And like 2 hours later, I'm still talking and they're still asking, well, what about if this happened? And okay, well, I pick more cards. And so that's a mistake. You're better to have a limit, a half, because you also run out of energy
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
after a certain amount of time. And so if the person keeps asking questions, well, what if I do this? What if they do that? What if they do this? And you keep, it ends up, it's all just a jumble. It doesn't
I
make any
agree.
sense anymore. And cards will contradict themselves.
I
So there's
agree.
something to be said for a half-hour reading or a 45-minute reading where
Hmm.
you've got all the, when you reach the end, when I reach the end, I just stop.
Just to start closing things down, if
Yep.
somebody picked up a tarot deck tomorrow, they've
Yep.
never they've never picked up a tarot deck before.
Yep.
They picked up a tarot deck tomorrow. Like, what is one or two pieces of advice that you would give to get started with working with the tarot?
Okay.
Like, what would you tell them?
First, you need a rider deck
Hmm.
because there's a picture in each card.
Yep.
If you use another deck, it's not going to work. So you buy a rider deck, and then what you do is you you write down a question. A question like, "Am I going to meet somebody?" or "How do I fix this problem?" or whatever it happens to be. You write down a number of questions that people might ask or you might wonder about. So you pick one question and let's say, how do I fix this problem? And so you pick it doesn't have to be an actual problem that you're going through or a question. It doesn't have to be a real question from somebody that you know. So you write down a question and then you pick a card at random and you think about what would I say if this were the answer to that question. So if the question is how do I fix this relationship problem and you get the two of cups reversed, then you need to deal with the person because there's a man and a woman in the picture. There's a couple in the picture.
Mm.
Whereas if the answer were the Four of Pentacles, then you're meant to sit and think about it for a while. There's no immediate answer. And so you've got the question that can be anything that you want, and then you pick a card at random and you do what you can with it, and you think about what you might say as an answer to that question. And then you put the card back in the deck and you pick another card, same question, a different card or another card, and you figure out what you might say from that question, from that card to give the answer to the question. And then that's what you do. And then tomorrow you pick a different question and you
Mm.
pick a card and see what you might say. And in this way, you're building up an ability and a way of looking at the card. And you, because the thing is, the question today might be, how do I fix this relationship? And you get the two of cups upside down. Tomorrow might be, how am I going to get a job? And you get the two of cups upside down. Same card, but the question isn't, it's not the same answer because it's a different question, but it's
Mm.
the same card. So you begin to see how a card gives you information about how to go about doing something rather than being a clear cut, definitive meaning.
Mm.
Because if you learn a meaning, it can be hard to relate that meaning to that particular question.
Mm.
Whereas if you practice with the picture, because the thing is, I mentioned this a long time ago. Let's say you and I are walking through the Louvre, right? And you're talking to me and you're saying to me, I'm going for a job interview tomorrow. How should I handle the interview? And at that moment, we stand in front of the Mona Lisa and we look up and we see the Mona Lisa. So, how do you handle the job tomorrow? You act like you know something they don't know because the Mona Lisa looks like she knows something you don't know. So, you're taking your lead from the picture
Mm.
and relating what happens at that moment or the card chosen at random.
Mm.
You're using it to stimulate a train of thought within the questioner. That's what you do, I think.
That is fascinating. Thank you. I love that approach. And yeah, it's because it sort of creates a library of answers to various questions, and you have to,
Think of
like
it
you
as
just,
a database,
yeah, like a great, like a database, and
although your
also,
library is a good word as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, thank you so much, John, for sharing all of these insights. I mean, there's so much that I want to think about after this conversation and just keep on
Okay.
pondering. And I will keep on pondering what my four pillars of my offering is going to be for the next couple of months to my
It's not
birthday.
necessarily four pillars. It might be. It's think about the four coins. I mean,
Yeah.
figure
And,
out what
and
it's about.
I really
But the thing is, you have to
appreciate,
sit down to do it because the fellow's
yeah.
sitting in the picture.
And I really
Whereas if you got
appreciate
the two of pentacles, you're standing balancing,
yeah.
but you're not. You're sitting down.
Yeah. And I mean, you said something which fits me very well because you said something which I'm sure you were aware, but you said, don't think that you already know the answer. Right, because there's a part of my brain which I'm like, but I already know what those four things are. But you're like, no, no, no. Give yourself some time, do the hermit,
Yep.
do the waiting, do the meditation, do the contemplation, and
And
see
follow
what
follow
shows
your
up.
inspiration as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When you think of something that's got possibilities,
Yeah.
don't ignore it. Don't think, well, it's never been done before. Who am I to think that I can do it? Don't do that. That goes back to the video yesterday about aim. When you begin to pay attention to what you're saying to yourself, or
Mm.
what you, if you when you begin to obey your own prompting, which
Yeah.
gets us back to AI, the prompt. When you begin to um, respond to your own prompt, your life gets better
Mm.
and it builds better and better.
Thank you so much, John, for
Okay,
sharing
anytime.
all of these insights. I have found it incredibly fascinating. And yeah, no, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this conversation with John and I. That was so interesting, and I'm sure we could have gone on for much longer and gone into much more in depth. If you found this conversation interesting and useful, I love it if you hit that subscribe button, like button, and then I will see you in the next video. And if you have any questions or any guests that you would like me to speak to, feel free to share all of that in the comment section below this video.